I had known Joe for about 10 years and spent many hours at his bar, the landing strip, drinking PBR and licking the girls who worked for him. They came and went, but one thing united them. They were fiery beauties. The current lineup was no exception. Karen at the bar and both waitresses Tina and Cookie had me drooling. Well, perhaps this statement is not entirely true. At least that was the case with Karen and Tina, but with Cookie it wasn't entirely true. When I looked at her, my thoughts went along the following path. Why can't I have a wife like that instead of the bitch I'm married to? It's not that she was less sexy than the other two. She was even more. But if Karen and Tina were sexy as hell, it was in an I'm sexy and I know it, and if you're lucky, I'll sleep with you way. With Cookie, it was more like, if I were yours, I'd be the best wife you could ask for. In other words, Karen and Tina would be more of lovers or friends with bonuses, while Cookie would be in it for the long haul. But no matter how much I would like to have sex with at least one of them, it won't happen. This will not happen because of my character. I was one of those guys who really meant it when they said yes and for better or for worse until death do us part. And at that moment, it was as bad as it could be. I recently found out that my wife slept with her boss, and apparently some of our mutual friends knew about it, although I wondered if they were actually my friends. It would seem that a true friend would tell you if he knew that your wife was betraying you. I think they were more Claudia's friends than mine. They certainly weren't on my friends list or Christmas card mailing list. I was sitting down, finishing my beer and thinking mean things about my wife when Bobby Denton sat down on the bar stool next to me. "Oh, what's up, Wally?" "I'm holding on, Bobby. What about you?" "Same thing. Will you be here tomorrow evening?" "What about tomorrow?" "Open mic night. We've got some good talent." "Yes, but I'll have to suffer listening to all your stupid jokes about blondes. I see your wife's face when you tell them, and I wonder why she hasn't cut out your tongue while you're sleeping." "I don't sleep next to her." I thought this was strange, but before I could comment, he said, "Gotta talk to Joe about tomorrow," and got up and left. Karen came over and asked if I was ready for another PBR, and I said no. I finished what was in front of me, then got up and headed home. Claudia had dinner ready when I arrived and greeted me with a hug and a kiss, which I reciprocated. Claudia didn't know that I knew about her secret life with her boss, and I didn't want her to know that I knew until I had all the cards in my hands. Until I do that, I still want to have a sex life, so I'll have to keep what I know to myself. When I found out what Claudia was up to, I contacted a lawyer and learned the cold, hard truth about divorce in a no-fault state. Long story short, I was in a quandary and Claudia would walk away smiling. According to the lawyer, my only other options are to just leave without divorcing Claudia or telling her where I went, or to smile, put up with it, and live with it. Put up with it and live with it. It's easy to tell when it's not happening to you. But in the end, I decided to do just that, to live with it until I was in a financial position to leave Claudia on my terms. My terms were to give her nothing and leave Thomas Billings broken. It would be easy to ruin her boss. All I had to do was let his wife know what he was up to, and if I understood her correctly, she would cut him off at the root and throw him to the curb. Sarah Billings was Barton Benton's only daughter, and he adored her, but she was not anyone's plaything. When his darling daughter announced her intention to marry Thomas Billings, whom she met at a corporate Christmas party, Benton insisted on a prenuptial agreement that would prevent Billings from ever taking control of Benton Industries if anything happened to Benton. Sarah was his only heir, and he wanted to make sure she retained control of the Benton fortune. How did I know about all this? Claudia worked at Benton Industries as a secretary for Billings and was drawn into a network of gossip. She would bring the gossip home and it would be the subject of conversation at dinner. When Benton and his wife died in a plane crash, his only heir, Sarah, was left with the company. She either didn't think she could handle it or didn't want to, so Thomas Billings, the purchasing manager, suddenly became president of Benton Industries. Sarah may not have wanted to run the company, but she was not stupid and retained the titles of CEO and chairman of the board of directors to keep everything under control. All I had to do with Billings was let his wife know about his exploits. Claudia followed Billings into the executive offices, but not as his secretary. She was promoted to personal assistant to the president. The promotion made me happy and sad at the same time. The extra money was nice because we had just bought a new house, new furniture, and appliances. What upset me was that the new job required her to travel with Billings as he flew around the country negotiating new contracts and such. Claudia went away for 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 times a month. I wanted my wife to be with me and not fly around the country, but she was happy with her new job, so I kept quiet and accepted it. That is, I was okay with it until Claudia and I went to a dance at the Moose Club. We had a great time, drinking, dancing, and chatting with friends. About 2 hours into the party, I had to go to the toilet. I was sitting in one of the booths when Brett and Chuck walked in. I recognized them by their voices. I heard Chuck say, "Claudia looks very sexy today." I know, and I'd really like to have a piece of her. I don't know if she can fit you into her schedule. Between her boss and Wally, she must do as much as she can. I thought maybe I could win her over by threatening to tell Wally what she does on trips with her boss. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Wally is so into that bitch that he wouldn't believe you. He might even punch you in the face for speaking ill of her. Chuck was right. I didn't believe it. I knew my Claudia. She loved me as much as I loved her. My Claudia would never, and I emphasize never, cheat on me. When I left the booth, I almost decided to go up to these 2 idiots and pay them back for what they said about my wife. Another part of me was telling me, "Don't be stupid. You'll only make a scene and end up embarrassing Claudia." I let my mind take over and went back to the party, trying to enjoy it. When the party was over, we went home, and Claudia did her best to have sex with me. When we hugged afterward, I knew that my wife had never cheated on me. Funny thing with us humans, we have this thing called human nature, and one of the things human nature forces us to do is prove things to ourselves. Someone says, "You can't do it, so you have to prove that you can." Someone else says, "It's just not possible, so you have to prove that it's possible." Someone says, "Your wife is cheating on you," and you have to prove that she is not. What's the easiest way to prove this? Show up where she is on one of her trips and see for yourself that it's a stone-cold lie. And that's what I did. Billings and Claudia went to Houston, and Claudia, as always, called me and told me where they were staying. I boarded the next flight to Houston. At the front desk, I asked if my wife had checked in yet, and after showing her ID, I was told that she had checked in and was in room 306. I said she was in Houston to meet her cousin and asked if he had checked in yet. Yes, of course. Cousin Thomas was in room 901. I headed to the home phone to call Claudia's number when I suddenly saw her and Billings exiting the elevator, holding hands. They smiled at each other. They stopped and kissed as the elevator doors closed behind them, then headed to the hotel bar. I had seen enough to know that what I had overheard was true, and all that was left was to turn around, go home, and decide what to do next. But then, human nature intervened. She told me, "You need to know more, Wally." I couldn't just follow them into the bar because they would notice me, so I had to change my appearance enough to not attract their attention. I went to the hotel gift shop. The place had a lot of Houston Astros stuff, and I bought a baseball cap, a windbreaker, and a canvas bag with the team's logo on it, as well as a pair of cheap sunglasses. I grabbed a copy of People magazine and headed to the public restroom. He put his jacket and tie in his bag, took out the lenses from his horn-rimmed glasses, put on a cap and windbreaker, and went to the bar. Of course, it wasn't the best suit, and wouldn't stand up to close inspection. But I didn't expect Claudia or Billings to scrutinize everyone. They definitely weren't expecting to see me in Houston, and I highly doubted that after holding hands and kissing in public they were even thinking about being private detectives or investigators. I noticed them when I entered the bar. They sat in a booth with drinks in front of them, and they kissed. I sat at a table so I could see them, ordered a drink, and sat there sipping my drink and pretending to read a magazine. Looking over the top of the magazine I held in front of me, I saw that Claudia's left hand was under the table, and I saw it move slightly. It was disgusting. They drank 2 drinks each, played kissing for a while, and after about half an hour they got up and left the bar. They walked past me and didn't even look at me. I waited a minute and then stood up and followed them. I watched as they walked hand in hand to the elevator, pressed the call button and kissed until the door opened. They entered, the door closed, and the elevator went up. He didn't stop on the third floor so Claudia could get out and go to her room. He went straight into ninth, stopped for a minute, and then went down. He also didn't stop on the third floor on the way down. I had seen enough and went home. I saw a lawyer, received bad news, and began the process to end my relationship with Claudia. When I finished work on Wednesday, I didn't even bother going home. I received a call from Claudia, who told me that Billings had an early morning meeting in Detroit, so they would fly there from Houston, but she would be back the next day. I stopped by the landing strip to have a couple of beers and see if Bobby was right when he told me they had some good talent lined up for the evening. I took a bar stool, ordered my usual PBR, and made myself comfortable. As usual, Bobby started the evening with a joke about the blonde. Two blondes were riding in an elevator. Long before they reached their floor, the elevator stopped, and a very handsome guy stepped inside. He smiled at the blondes and pressed the button for the next floor. He then stood and admired the view as the elevator went up. When the door opened behind him, he smiled at the blondes, turned and walked out the door. As he turned to leave, the blondes saw a large amount of dandruff on his back. The first blonde turned to the second and said, "Ew!" The second blonde said, "It's okay. If I can get him home, I'll give him head and shoulders." The first blonde looked at the second and asked, "How do you give your shoulders?" Bobby got a good laugh from everyone except his wife. She just sat at her table in the back and gave him dirty looks. He continued and introduced the next aspiring comedian. The guy got up on stage, looked at the crowd, and said, "Two boys were arguing when the teacher came into the room. The teacher asked them why they were arguing, and the first boy said, 'We found $10 and decided to give it to whoever can tell the biggest lie.' 'You should be ashamed,' said the teacher. 'When I was your age, I didn't even know what a lie was.' The two boys looked at each other, nodded, and then gave $10 to the teacher. He received a polite laugh and continued. A man comes to the doctor and says, 'Doctor, wherever I touch, it hurts.' The doctor asked him what he meant, and the man said, 'When I touch my shoulder, it hurts.' Hurt. When I touch my knee, it hurts. When I touch my forehead, it hurts a lot." The doctor nodded in understanding and said, "I know exactly what the problem is. You have a broken finger." He wasn't that funny, so I was sipping my beer and looking around the crowd. Not for any reason, just people watching, when Cookie sat down next to me. "Hey, handsome, can you buy the poor worker a drink?" I got Karen's attention and pointed at Cookie, and Karen nodded, and after a minute she put a screwdriver in front of Cookie. "And why does Wally owe the pleasure of your company?" "No way, just curious." "Curious? Curious about what?" "About you." "Me? You can't be serious." "Why not? You're handsome and a good guy." "Good? Me?" "Yes, you. You come here often, and I see the way you look at Karen, Tina, and me, and you like what you see, but you're not like many others who come here. You keep your hands to yourself, and don't make vulgar or lewd comments. The question is, why didn't you make a move on one of us?" "You know why, Cookie? I'm married." "Why?" "Why what?" "Why are you married to this cheater? You should know that she is cheating on you." This caught me off guard, and Cookie caught the look on my face. "You didn't know? How could you not know? Everyone else knows." "How do you know?" She pointed and said, "See that guy sitting there in the corner box with the red hair? That's my brother Rick, and he works at Benton. He came in here one day and saw you sitting here talking to me. Later, he told me that he felt sorry for you, and when I asked him why, he told me. What I can't understand is why, if everyone knows, no one bothered to tell me. I don't know. Maybe for any number of reasons. Name a few. These days, there are what are called open marriages. There are couples who swap partners with others, and guys who like their wives to have sex with other men. There are those like you who love you too much to be those who hurt you, and those who may be on the other side of the coin and hate you enough to be glad that this is happening to you. There may be people who love you but love your wife more. She finished her screwdriver and said, "Break's over. We need to get back to work." I watched her walk away and wondered if she'd say yes to a date once I got rid of Claudia. At the podium, Bobby announced that it was now time for anyone in the audience who wanted to try. And a voice from the back row said, "I want to try it." Everyone in the audience, including Bobby, was surprised to see his blonde wife, Brianna, stand up and head to the stage. Bobby looked stunned as he handed the microphone to his wife. "I know that my stupid husband likes to tell blonde jokes while looking straight at me, but did you notice that Bobby is also blonde? It's time to get some change, honey." An Irishman, a Mexican man, and a blonde man were working in construction on scaffolding on the 20th floor of a building. They were having lunch, and the Irishman said, "Boiled beef and cabbage. If they give me boiled beef and cabbage for lunch one more time, I will jump off this building." The Mexican opened his lunchbox again and exclaimed, "Burritos again. If they give me a burrito again, I'll jump too." The blonde opened his lunch and said, "Bologna again. If they give me a bologna sandwich again, I'll jump too." The next day, the Irishman opened his lunch, saw boiled beef and cabbage, and jumped to his death. The Mexican opened his lunch, saw a burrito, and jumped too. The blonde opened his lunch, saw bologna, and jumped too. At the funeral, the Irishman's wife cried. She said, "If I had known how tired he was of boiled beef and cabbage, I would never give it to him again." The Mexican's wife also cried and said, "I could give him tacos or enchiladas. I didn't realize how much he hated burritos." Everyone turned and looked at the blonde's wife, and she said, "Don't look at me. He packed his own lunch." She got a big laugh and said, "What do you call a blonde guy with an IQ of 35? Gifted. Why don't blondes eat more M&Ms? They're too hard to clean. What's the difference between blonde and government bonds? Bonds are maturing." Brianna received a standing ovation from the women in the audience and their men, who wanted to remain in the caresses of their ladies. Usually, when the comedian finished, Bobby would come over, take the microphone, and ask if anyone else wanted to try. If no one else wanted to try, Bobby would tell one or two more blonde jokes, thank everyone for coming, and bid everyone good night. This time, it didn't happen that way. When Bobby finally walked up to the podium, he bent down to pick up the microphone and muttered, "Bitch!" not realizing that the microphone was sensitive enough to hear it. There was silence in the room, and when Bobby raised the microphone to his mouth and said, "That's it for today, guys," there was none of the usual applause and approval. I got up and went home. The next 3 months passed with me pretending to be a loving husband to a woman who was pretending to be a loving wife. I received several commissions and one bonus check, which I cashed and hid in a safe that Claudia didn't know about. It was a small amount, about $10,000, and it was not enough to support me after a divorce in which I would have to give up half of everything I had. And then the gods smiled at me. Like many other people, I bought lottery tickets, crossed my fingers and dreamed. I got lucky and bought a winning Powerball ticket. I matched 4 numbers. There was a Powerball and a power play, so the ticket cost $40,000 before taxes. It ended up being about $28,200 after they were paid. It wouldn't make me rich, but it would be enough to start a new life after Claudia. I had 6 months to cash it out, so I needed to get the divorce to be final before I got the money. Otherwise, it would go into the assets we would split between us. The time was right. Claudia just got a promotion that paid her a little more than I was making, so there will be no child support. I had to pay legal fees, and there was no escape from that, unless I could somehow force Claudia to file for divorce, and I didn't see that happening. My biggest problem as I saw it was that Claudia could contest the divorce. If she did, she could drag it out before the ticket had to be presented, and then it would become another one of our assets that would have to be divided equally. I needed to find a way to make sure Claudia wouldn't want to resist. I didn't really know if she wanted it or not, but I needed a way to make sure she didn't. No way. In no-fault divorces, you can file with infidelity as the reason, but it doesn't matter. You can show evidence of cheating on your wife's things, and it won't matter. You still have to divide everything equally. Even if I file for divorce and claim infidelity, Claudia might laugh at me and tell me that I have no proof, that it's all in my imagination, and we need to go to couples counseling to figure out where my insecurities come from and then deal with it. The fact is that I had no proof. Saying, "Come on, everyone knows," is not proof, and neither is the fact that I saw them holding hands and kissing. I needed hard audio and video evidence to make the claim substantiated. Evidence that I could throw on the table in front of Claudia so she would know she was caught and that she would be wasting her time trying to fight to keep us together. I didn't have this evidence, and after talking to several private investigation agencies, I realized that I couldn't afford to get the evidence I needed this way. While I was sitting in my doctor's waiting room, a woman brought an elderly man in a wheelchair into the room. When she approached the reception desk, the man was sitting there alone and silent. Just when I thought I should make small talk with him, the boy slid off his mother's lap and walked over to the wheelchair. Putting his hand on the old man's arm, he said, "I understand how you feel. My mother makes me ride in a stroller, too." The woman, her name was Maria, had a good laugh at this and continued, "As a pediatric nurse, I have the difficult task of administering vaccinations to children. One day I walked into the room to give 4-year-old Lizzie a shot. When she saw the needle, she screamed, 'No, no, 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 no!' Her mother scolded her and said, 'Lizzie, this is not good.' To which Lizzie screamed even louder, 'No, thank you! No, thank you!' This drew respectful laughter, and she ended her speech by saying, 'I was riding my bike with my 8-year-old granddaughter, Carolyn. I daydreamed a little. In 10 years, I told her, you'll want to be with your friends, and you won't be walking and biking and swimming with me like you are now.' Carolyn shrugged. 'In 10 years, you'll be too old for all that, of things.' It was open mic night at the landing strip, and I had a couple of drinks before heading home to the house without Claudia. She was on a business trip again. Cookie took the chair next to me and asked the usual question, 'Can you buy the poor worker a drink?' She seemed to do this every time I came over. I smiled and waved to Karen, who walked up with Cookie's drink already in hand. We seemed to have settled into a routine. 'You seem calm today, Wally. You don't seem like you're enjoying the fun.' 'A lot on my mind, Cook. For example, I was in the mood to tell her everything. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me, so if you can't afford it, just find someone who can.' 'What? You said you don't think his wife knows, so tell her. Let her set the dogs on 2 cheaters. She'll catch them, divorce his ass, and call your wife her husband's mistress. It will be known to everyone, and you won't have to pay not a penny.' I laughed, grabbed her, and kissed her. 'Thank you, thank you, thank you,' and kissed her again. She laughed and said, 'Once you get rid of your wife, maybe we can do this again.' 'Something to look forward to,' I said, and stood up, leaving the bar. The next day I called Sarah Billings, reminded her who I was, and asked to talk to her. She asked what, and I told her it was about a situation that affected both of us, and was too sensitive to discuss over the phone. She agreed to meet me for lunch at Tricoxi's at noon. I got there 10 minutes early and told Jared I was expecting a guest and described her, and then took the box in the back. Mrs. Billings arrived promptly at noon, and after settling down opposite me in the box, she got right down to business. 'What exactly do you want to talk about?' While I was waiting for her to arrive, I was thinking about the best way to bring up the topic, and still didn't have a clear idea until she sat down. Her straightforward approach solved it for me. I got straight to the point. 'Your husband and my wife are having an affair. Quite a long one, I'm afraid. You can't be serious.' 'I'm afraid I'm quite serious.' 'Do you have any proof?' 'Only what I saw with my own eyes.' 'Did you actually see them?' 'Not involved in the act as such, but I've seen enough to convince me.' 'I don't understand. You saw them but didn't see them?' I explained how I found out about what they were doing and how I went to Houston and what I saw there. I admit that this is not something that the courts will accept as evidence, but I have not the slightest doubt as to what happened after they left the elevator on the 9th floor. I wouldn't have any doubts either if I saw it. What are you going to do?' 'Divorce her as soon as possible.' 'Thank you very much for what you told me. I had 2 reasons for telling you what was going on. 1, I really thought you should know. What about the second one? quite selfish. The divorce will go much faster if Claudia doesn't fight, but I think that in the absence of conclusive evidence, she will fight it. The problem is that I have no conclusive evidence. I was considering hiring a private investigator to get me this evidence and found that I cannot afford it. But you can. My hope is that you will be willing to obtain the necessary evidence to get rid of the traitor, and then, as a token of gratitude for my warning you, share this evidence with me. She looked at me thoughtfully and then said, "And then, for revenge, you will suggest that we have sex, and then you will inform them about it so that they wipe away their nose." I laughed and said, "Be serious, Mrs. Billings. There's no way you can make anyone believe that a woman like you would go to bed with a guy like me, even to get back at her husband. Besides, if we do that and let them know, this will interfere with what I'm trying to achieve. It will give Claudia something she can use to countersue, and it will lead to a drawn-out divorce. I want to get rid of the cheating bastard as soon as possible. I think this will affect my divorce, too. Okay, we'll just write it down as a what could have been and move on with things." We exchanged mobile phone numbers and then parted ways. When I got home, Claudia was at dinner and we talked about our day. We both continued to play the role of loving spouses, so we snuggled on the couch and watched TV until bed, then went to bed and had sex. I don't know if Claudia considered it lovemaking or not, but to me, it was just sex. Tuesday was a repeat of Monday, and I expected Wednesday to be a repeat of both Monday and Tuesday, but at noon on Wednesday, Claudia called me and said that she and her boss had to be in Detroit on Thursday morning, so they were on the 4 p.m. flight. And she won't be home that night. So I did what he usually did when Claudia was away on Wednesday and went to the landing strip. I was late at work and ended up getting there after the open mic night had already started, so I missed Bobby's jokes about blondes. Karen brought me my PBR, and I turned my attention to the podium. I looked at the table where his wife usually sat and saw that she was not there. As far as I remember, she never missed an open mic night, and I wondered if it had something to do with what happened last week. The guy standing there was a regular, but I hadn't seen him on stage before. The economy is so bad, CEOs are now playing mini-golf. Hot Wheels and Matchbox shares are trading higher than GM's. McDonald's is selling quarter-unzares. Parents in Beverly Hills fired their nannies and now have to find out the names of their children. Truck with Americans caught trying to sneak into Mexico. Motel 6 no longer leaves the lights on. And finally, the mafia fires the judges. I laughed politely and then heard, "Buy the poor worker a drink," and turned to see Cookie taking the chair next to me. The routine was established, and before I could say a word, Karen had already placed the drink in front of Cookie. I surprised her when I grabbed her and kissed her. "Damn it, what was that?" "I took your advice and contacted Sarah Billings. She didn't know that her husband was having fun behind her back. I'm sure she'll deal with him, but I'm not sure she'll share it with me. But that doesn't matter. How you said when she divorces him, it will become public property and I can use it. And all I get for this advice is a kiss? What would you like in return? Ask me again when your divorce is finalized." I looked at her for a long time and then said, "Count on it." She smiled, finished her drink, and then went back to work. Claudia was home when I got home from work on Thursday and dinner was almost ready. When I walked in, she asked, "Dinner or dessert first?" "Dinner first. If we start with dessert, we might never get to dinner and it would be a shame to throw it away. I remember the times when you always chose dessert first. And I remember a time when you weren't a cheating bitch," I thought, while my mouth said, I was much younger then and didn't realize that I needed food to maintain my strength and stamina. After dinner, we snuggled up on the sofa and watched TV and then went to bed. Claudia made love or pretended to, but I just had sex. The next week was the same, and Claudia did not go on business trips, but she worked late and came in for half a day on Saturday. We had sex those 3 days, and I wondered if it was because she felt guilty and was trying to ease her conscience by giving me as much as she gave to her lover, or because she liked the knowledge of the fact that I was sleeping with her after her lover. I doubted that I would ever know the answer to this question. Sarah Billings called me on Tuesday and asked me to meet her at Trikakshi's for lunch. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the box in the back. There was a large envelope on the table in front of her, and she pushed it toward me as I sat down. It's everything you could want and more. You already know she's cheating on you, so I wouldn't watch the CD if I were you. The images will probably get stuck in your mind. I know they'll get stuck in mine. He will be in for a big surprise when I submit the documents to him. My investigator found out that Dear Thomas rented the apartment to use it as a love nest. If he rented it in his own name, my investigator would not have the right to equip the place with audio and video. Where he went wrong was that instead of withdrawing it in his name, he paid for it through the company. Since he paid for it through the company, and I am an officer of the company, I could authorize it, and I did. Let me guess, Tuesday and Thursday when Claudia told me she had to work late, and Saturday when she told me she had to come in and work half a day. You're right, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are for long lunch breaks. I'm surprised they didn't do something on Sunday to make the week perfect. Our wedding anniversary was on Sunday and he couldn't leave. Now that you have your proof, what are you going to do? Hire a lawyer and file for divorce. Use mine. He already has the papers ready. I plan to file for divorce from my husband right at work, right before I demote him to the job he held before we got married. If we do everything right, we can file for divorce both at the same time. Give me your lawyer's number and I'll call him as soon as I get back to the office. I thought you would do this, so I told him to expect your call. One more thing. Because of some things that were said after they finished their affairs, I am filing an order of protection against him at the same time as the divorce. To you, it might be worth doing the same. Why? What was said? They were talking about how it would be easier for them if you and I were no longer alive. Tom said something like, if I died, the prenuptial agreement would be voided and he would be on the easy street. Yours. The wife laughed and said that if you died, it would only bring her 100,000. 200,000 if your death were an accident, and then she asked him if he had any ideas how it could be done, and he said that this is something to think about. I can tell by the tone of their voices that they were just joking, but this gave me another reason to hit him. My problem is that I don't think I can stand in front of the judge at a hearing and say, I'm afraid for my life, without laughing. She was lying either way. I only have 25 grand in life insurance, but I'm with you about there being another reason to hit her. Do you have any vacation? 3 weeks. Why do you ask? I was thinking that the day after I demoted Tommy, I could make you the new president of the company. It would be just for show, of course, but think how he would take it that the husband of the woman he slept with became his new boss. He would be furious. You could even pretend that you are going to gather materials to fire him. Why don't you just fire him instead of demoting him? He will likely sue the company for wrongful termination. What kind of illegal termination? The apartment he rents with company money for personal use is an illegal use of company funds for personal use. His relationship with a married employee under his direct report opens the company to a sexual harassment lawsuit if he gets tired from Claudia and kick her out, and she'll get angry enough to try to get back at him. All this, plus the fact that he's cheating on you, shows that he's unreliable, and you can't keep someone you can't trust around. Discuss everything. It's with your lawyer and see what he says. The downside to this argument is that you'll have to keep Claudia, even though you probably want to rip her hair out by the roots. Why would I want to do that? Leave her, I mean. Because of sexual harassment. All she would have to say is that your husband told her he would fire her and give her a bad reference if she didn't go along with it. What you need to do is to leave her, give her a small raise, and promote her to the worst position in the company, and after a while, she will get tired of the bad job and leave. I looked at my watch. I need to get back to work. Thanks for that, I said, holding the envelope in front of me and standing up. What about my idea of making you president for a few weeks? It won't do anything if you fire him, and he won't be there to see it. Maybe I just want to keep you around so I can get to know you better. We can talk about this when we have more time. You have my number. Call me. As I drove to work, I thought about her words that she wanted to get to know me better. I would call her, but only to discuss the divorce and when to file for divorce from our unfaithful spouses. As for better dating, no. She was steak, lobster, and champagne, and I was Diet Coke, burger, and fries. It just won't work. When I returned to the office, I called the lawyer whose number she gave me and found that he had been waiting quite a long time for my call. We talked, and he told me that the paperwork was ready and all he had to do was copy the paperwork and paste my information in place of Sarah's. He told me the price, and I gave him my credit card number. He said the documents would be ready for my signature the next day, and I made an appointment with him at 4 o'clock to sign them. Claudia was in one of her horny moods when I got home, so after dinner we went to the bedroom early and had rough sex. I knew we didn't have much time left together, and since I had no idea how long it would take me to find another partner after Claudia was notified of the divorce, I decided to take as much as I could. When we finished, Claudia snuggled up to me, kissed my neck, muttered, "I love you," and fell asleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she really meant it, and if so, why she cheated on me. I was still thinking about it when I fell asleep. At 4 o'clock, I entered the office of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, and was shown into the office of Stanley Howe. I was surprised to see Sarah there, and it turned out that signing my documents was only part of the reason for my coming. This was also a strategy meeting. The question was when to file for divorce for the upcoming ex-spouses. Due to the expiration date of my lottery ticket, I wanted to do it yesterday, but Sarah wanted to wait for the right moment. The right moment, in her opinion, was when the couple was on one of their trips. She imagined it happening as they walked out of an elevator into a hotel lobby, holding hands. I insisted on immediate notification, and finally Sarah asked, "Why is it so important that you can't wait a week or two?" I opened my mouth to tell her and closed it just as quickly. I wasn't a lawyer and didn't know the law, and I could be wrong, but it could be that hiding assets was against some law or another and something that my lawyer wouldn't allow me to do. "It's just important to me," is all I said. The meeting ended with the matter being put on hold until Sarah knew when the creep and Claudia would be heading out again. There was a coffee shop on the ground floor of the building, and as we got off the elevator, Sarah asked me to join her for a cup of coffee. We ordered coffee and sat down at a table. Sarah took a sip of her coffee and then said, "Okay, Wally, spit it out." "What to post?" "It was obvious that you were going to tell us why you were in such a hurry to notify your wife, but then you suddenly decided not to talk about it. So come on, what's going on?" I told her about the lottery ticket, its expiration date, and why I suddenly decided not to tell Howe about it. She laughed and said, "It's no problem, Wally. Give me the ticket. I'll buy it from you and cash it in." "I cannot do it." "Why not?" "Think about why you came to me in the first place. You couldn't afford to hire a private investigator, but I could. You knew I could because I'm rich. I'm still rich, Wally, and what good is wealth if you can't use it to achieve your desires? I want Tommy to be notified, as I described in Howe's office. To get what I want, I will use my wealth. Plus, you'll come clean if I buy your ticket." "Like this? I'll give you $40,000 in cash, and you can hide it in a safe deposit box or under your mattress, and you won't have to pay state or federal taxes. But you'll end up paying taxes on it. So what? I'll give the ticket to my accountant, and by the time it's time to pay taxes, it will disappear into all this junk and mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. Once again, Wally, I'm just using my wealth to get what I want." I shrugged and agreed. I don't know how she arranged it, but 2 days later she gave me $40,000 in cash, and I put it in my safe. Sarah got what she wanted, and everything happened just as she hoped. Claudia and the creep walked out of the elevator in the lobby of the Atlanta Marriott Hotel, smiling and holding hands. The smiles disappeared as a beautiful bubblegum blonde walked up to them, handed them each an envelope, and told them they had been notified. Claudia looked at the envelope in her hand and began to cry. The bastard looked at him and his face took on a menacing look. He tried to tear it in half but couldn't because it was too thick. He threw it on the floor and kicked it, and it slid across the floor and into the elevator as soon as the doors closed. Claudia fell into one of the chairs in the hall and cried into her hands. Believe it or not, when I turned off the CD player and removed the disc, I felt sad that Sarah had arranged for the video recording. I loved Claudia and still had feelings for her. Seeing her in trouble made me feel sad. But the feelings I still had for her weren't strong enough to overcome what she did to the bastard. I thought back to the morning she was notified, and I remembered every one of the calls I saw her make that I ignored. I wonder what she was thinking, what she could have said to make a difference. When she came home, she found that I had changed the locks and couldn't get in. I let her ring the doorbell and knock on the door for 15 minutes before I opened the door. Have you not read all the documentation in the envelope you were given? Have you not read the order of protection requiring you to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, my place of work, and any other place where I may be? Leave now, before I call the police, and they come and arrest you. You can't do this to me, Wally. This is my home, too. The judge who signed the warrant didn't take this into account. Now leave before I call the police. Damn it, Wally, you have to let me talk to you. You have to let me explain. No, I shouldn't, Claudia. That case of chlamydia that you gave me explained everything. And I slammed the door in her face. It was a lie, of course. She didn't give me a sexually transmitted disease, but she didn't know that. And I hoped the thought of it would plague her until she got tested. 5 minutes later, she was still knocking on the door, so I called the police. A car with 2 officers arrived. I showed them the documents, and they told Claudia that she needed to leave. She tried to argue with them until they finally told her to leave and stay away, or they would arrest her. She cast an angry glance at the house and left. I waited 2 days, and then called her and told her I would meet her at Barney's Tavern and let her vent. We met and I heard what I expected. She did it for us. She did this because the money would help pay off our debts, and once that was done, she planned to leave. She only loved me. And with Billings, it was just sex. And not even very good sex. I was much better. We can overcome this because we love each other. Just give her a chance. I listened to her and then said my piece. Just sign the paperwork and mail it in, Claudia. If you sign, all the videos of you and your lover having an affair will never reach your family and friends. Just sign and leave it, Claudia. After watching the videos of you and your lover, these scenes will remain etched in my memory forever, as long as you're there, to remind me of them. We're done, Claudia. Accept it and move on. Damn it, Wally. I don't want a divorce. I love you. Then you should never have cheated on me. You are now used and damaged goods, and I want nothing more to do with you. Consider yourself lucky. At least you still have a job, and that's more than can be said about your lover. I stood up and left her sitting there, and he smiled, knowing that when she was ready to leave, she would discover that I had not paid the bill, and she would have to pay it. Sarah called me 3 days later and asked me to meet her for lunch. We met at Tricoxi's, and after Mandy took our order, she told me what happened after her husband was notified. He never seemed to find the envelope he kicked into the elevator, so he never read the order of protection. When he got home, he couldn't get in because Sarah had changed the locks. He started banging on the front door, kicking it, and yelling at Sarah, "Get your ass down here and open the damn door." He apparently didn't notice a car parked on the street with Avery Security Service written on the door. 2 people got out of the car, approached him, and politely asked him to leave. He told them to go to hell and get off his property. One of the guards told him that they were hired to protect the property and that he would comply with an order of protection requiring him to stay at least 500 feet away from the house and Mrs. Billings. The creep again told them to get off his property, and when they didn't move, he pushed one of them. When he awoke after being tased, he found that 2 guards had been replaced by 2 police officers, and he was handcuffed. When he left the prison and reported for work, he was stopped by 2 guards who told him that they had orders to keep him away from the hall. One of the security guards picked up the phone and made a call, and 3 minutes later, the HR manager appeared and told him that he was fired for misusing company funds and violating the moral section of the company's policies and procedures manual. "You can't do this to me, asshole! You seem to have forgotten that I run this place." He raged and shouted, and when he refused to leave, the HR manager called the police. They arrived, and he was on his way to jail for the second time for violating an order of protection. He didn't know that Sarah was in the building, so when he was brought before the judge, the same one he was already in front of for the first time, he was able to beat the charge, since he had no reason to think that Sarah could be there. She didn't have an office in the building, and she wasn't part of the regular staff, so he had no reason to think she could be there. The judge accepted this and released him. But he was humiliated by being led out of the building in handcuffs in front of the people he once led. One of these people was Claudia. Sarah, as chair of the board, assumed the duties of acting president and informed Claudia that she had no need for a personal assistant and that Claudia should report to the secretary pool until another position could be found for her. She would keep her salary and any other benefits she had acquired as a personal assistant, and then Sarah told her that she actually wanted to fire Claudia, and the only reason she didn't was because I dissuaded. Sarah told me that Claudia seemed stunned that Sarah even knew me, let alone that she was talking to me. The next day, she called Claudia into her office and told her that she had been promoted to office manager and assigned to a plant 30 miles away. She then told Claudia that she would be getting a 10% raise to make sure she made the same as me or even a little more so I wouldn't have to pay child support. She ended the meeting by telling Claudia that after our divorces were finalized, she intended to have sex with me to thank me for telling her about her husband's infidelity. Sarah told me that Claudia left the meeting crying and shaking her head. Claudia apparently believed me when I told her there might be videos of her and her lover because she didn't fight the divorce. It was a standard halving of assets, and all it cost me, besides Claudia, was the loss of my house. It had to be sold, and a share of the sale was divided between us. We didn't live in it very long, so there wasn't much equity, but it was enough for me to make a down payment and move into an apartment. Claudia rented an apartment near her new job. She still calls me at least once a week, asking me to give her another chance. I always respond with, "Thanks for the offer, but no thanks." The day after my divorce was finalized, Sarah called me and asked when my divorce would be finalized. "Yesterday. Mine ends today. Do you have plans for tomorrow?" "No, I don't have anything planned." "Now you have plans. Pick me up at 6 in the evening from my office. We will celebrate our freedom with a night of dinner, drinks, and dancing, after which I will fulfill the promise I made to my ex and yours." "Promise? What promise?" "Remember when I told you that I told your wife that after our divorces, I would have sex with you? I told my husband the same thing. I spoke, and now it's time to fulfill the promise." "You don't have to do that. I didn't expect that. I thought you were just teasing Claudia." "Oh, no, honey, I meant every word." I hadn't had sex since the last time with Claudia, and Sarah was a very attractive woman, so I said, "I'll be there at 6. "See you then," she said, and hung up. Sarah looked sexy when I picked her up at 6. As soon as we got into the car, she moved closer to me and kissed me passionately. When she released me, she said that she had made a reservation at a popular restaurant, and on the way there, she told me that she wanted the first time to happen on the bed she shared with Thomas. "We can do next time on the bed I shared with my ex. Is this right for me?" "My mom taught me that ladies always have priority, so if that's what you want, then so be it." It was a good thing that the next day was Saturday, and I didn't have to go to work because by the time Sarah was done with me, I didn't have the strength to get out of bed. Sarah and I woke up late on Saturday and went to brunch at Pegasus, and then drove to my house and repeated the Friday night, and we went back to her house on Sunday. I couldn't spend Sunday night at Sarah's because I had to go home and get the clothes I was going to wear to work. It wouldn't hurt if I had time to rest a little. For the next 2 months, Sarah and I met 2 or 3 times a week and every weekend. Then on Friday night, while we were spending the weekend at my house, she told me it was our last weekend together. "I've enjoyed every minute with you, but I'm not in love with you. And if you're being honest, you're not in love with me either. We're good friends with wonderful benefits, but that's all we have and will ever have. I would really like to continue this, but something has come up that will make this impossible. Is this something I did? I think we can say yes. Could you explain this?" You divorced your wife, so yes, you could say it was something you did. It's clear as day. It turns out that your ex is a more than average office manager, and my office manager at the central office resigned. Her husband was transferred to the company office in Los Angeles. I am going to transfer your ex from where she is now to my office, and it would be too awkward to work with her while I'm dating you, especially since I have no doubt that she knows about us. That was one of the reasons we started, right? To get under the skin of our exes. Unbelievable. She ruined my life when we were married, and now she's ruining my life when we're not married. I think I should take advantage of our last 3 days. And I picked her up and carried her to the bedroom. We said a tearful goodbye on Sunday, and on Monday morning I began the next phase of my life as a single man looking for love. Or at least a damn good attraction. I spent most of Monday and Tuesday somewhat depressed over the loss of Sarah, but by Wednesday I was in decent spirits. Because of all the evenings spent with Sarah, it had been a month and a half since I had been to Landing Strip. I had just sat down on the bar stool when Karen walked over with my PBR and placed it in front of me on the bar counter. Welcome back, stranger. Glad to be back, sexy lady. Tonight is the night I get lucky and you say yes to a date with me? You know I don't date clients. Then date me and I'll stop coming here. Well, lose the tip you leave? No way, Wally, no way. But if you play your cards right, there's one girl here who might give you a chance, she said before walking away to serve another client. I was halfway through my 3rd beer when Bobby took the seat next to me. Where have you been, Wally? Was the talent so bad that you left? Not at all. There were just important things to do. I see. I saw you with your important business in Alhambra last week. Good to see you again. He stood up to talk to other customers and then walked up to the stage to welcome everyone to another open mic night and start a joke about blondes. The blonde bought a thermos. She brought it to work to show her friends. One of her friends, also a blonde, asked, "What does it do?" The first blonde said, "It keeps warm things warm and cold things cold." The friend asked, "What do you have in it now?" "A cup of coffee and 2 ice creams." He then introduced the first amateur comedian. It turned out that he was a guy from the day shift at the Maverick store where I refueled in the morning. My mom lives in Newark, and I haven't seen her in a couple of years, but we talk on the phone at least once a week. We talked yesterday, and when I hung up, I thought about my mom and came up with 10 reasons why I owe my mom. My mom taught me the value of a job well done. If you're going to kill each other, do it outside. I just finished cleaning. My mom taught me about religion. You better pray for it to come out of the carpet. My mom taught me how to time travel. If you don't straighten up, I'll punch you in the middle of next week. My mom taught me logic. Because I said so, that's why. My mother taught me foresight. Make sure you wear clean underwear in case you have an accident. My mother taught me irony. Keep crying and I'll give you a reason to cry. My mother taught me the science of osmosis. Shut your mouth and eat your dinner. My mother taught me contortionism. Look at that dirt on the back of your head. My mother taught me endurance. You will sit here until you eat all the spinach. But most of all, my mom taught me patience. Just wait until your dad gets home. I had to laugh at this because I remember hearing most of it from my mom, and judging by the laughter, it also struck a chord with everyone in the room. Halfway through the show, someone sat down in the chair next to me, and I heard the familiar, "Will you buy the poor worker a drink?" As usual, as soon as the words left her mouth, Karen had already placed the drink in front of Cookie. "Remember what I said about the cards, Wally," she told me before leaving to serve another customer. "What did she mean?" asked Cookie. "I think it was her way of telling me that since I'm now divorced, I should ask you out." "Well, so what? Are you going to do this?" "What are my chances of you saying yes?" "You won't know until you ask." "Would you like to have dinner with me on your next day off?" "No." "I think that answers my question about my chances." "No, it's not like that." "You're confusing me, girl. I'm getting mixed signals." "No, I can't have dinner with you on my next day off, but I have free time on my second day off." "And when will it be?" "On Tuesday." "Okay, I'll try again." "Would you like to have dinner with me next Tuesday?" "Yes, I would like to." She took a napkin from the bar, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. "Call me so we can arrange everything." I have to go, she said, and stood up to go back to work. Since I had just finished my third beer, I decided it was time for me to go. I was at Cookie's door at 6 on Tuesday, and as I pressed the doorbell, I wondered where the next chapter of my life would take me. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.